Time now for Focus, and today we have a report from Mexico on oil theft. Generally, it's stolen under cover of darkness, but it's sold out in the open on the black market. As you'll see in this report by our team in Mexico, some of the country's biggest criminal organizations have been getting involved, and they're using bribery and violence to co-opt all sorts of officials. The epicenter of the crisis is Puebla state.
It's midday in Puebla's wholesale market. Our team has gone undercover to film an illegal activity that's costing Mexico billions of dollars. Among the goods for sale here, stolen fuel, sold in broad daylight. The people hawking it are known as huachicoleros. They attract thousands of customers by selling it cheaper than gas stations.
Bueno, quiero 20 litros.
It's not long before our cover is blown. The huachicoleros are in the crosshairs of the authorities. Across the region, tensions are running high. The government has even deployed the army to back up local police and private security agents hired by the state oil company, Pemex.
There must be around 800 liters of stolen oil here, and this vehicle clearly has been stolen.
This policeman wears dark sunglasses to conceal his identity. Like most of his colleagues, he's received threats from the huachicoleros.
And this one has 4 containers.
Inside each container is the equivalent of $1,000 of fuel. Every day in the state of Puebla alone, Mexican police seize between 20 and 30 vehicles like these.
Oil thieves have started using women and children as human shields. They keep them close to where they operate to hinder our work, to make it difficult to track them down. So instead of taking on criminals, we found ourselves face to face with ordinary people.
Keeping watch over a network of oil pipelines that measures some 40,000 kilometers is no easy task.
This is an area where they often come to siphon the pipeline. Let's stop the vehicle here. Look, that's what's left of an access hole to the pipeline that's been filled up again. All the spilled oil left a mark on the ground, and nothing can grow here now.
Further away, officers make a startling discovery. Freshly dug earth and a small puddle. Signs that lead them to believe that the fuel was stolen recently.
I think that around 7 or 8 people must have taken part in this theft. There are those who pierce a hole in the pipe, those who fill the containers and load the truck. There are also the lookouts who have to warn the others well in advance if they spot a military convoy or police, so everyone can clear off in time.
Many of the country's oil pipelines cut right through the state of Puebla, which lies between the Gulf of Mexico and the capital, Mexico City. The task of monitoring the entire region is made easier in this ultra-sophisticated control center.
Es muy probable.
Sometimes stolen petrol ends up being sold at well-known service stations. There are telltale signs, like when the forecourt hardly buys any petrol from the state oil company, but still manages to make huge profits. That raises suspicions.
The fuel sold by street hawkers is only the tip of the iceberg. According to a study carried out by Pemex, the overwhelming majority of stolen fuel ends up in the hands of large companies or in gas stations. And in some cases, security forces have also been implicated.
We've
already arrested 5 municipal policemen, a mayor, and 2 policemen from the state capital for colluding with oil thieves.
2 policías más de la zona metropolitana.
This is the only mayor in the region who has dared to take on the thieves. He's accompanied by bodyguards whenever he steps foot outside the town hall. Most of his colleagues have been bribed into turning a blind eye to the traffickers. He says that at least 8 rival groups compete for control of the illegal trade in his village, Tochtepec.
I can tell you that everyone in this village is complicit in one way or another. Why? Stolen oil is twice cheaper than at the gas station.
Selling stolen fuel is a quick and easy way to make money in this largely rural part of Mexico, where average wages are low. But people here are reluctant to speak openly about it for fear of being targeted by local authorities pushing to crack down on the trade.
Huachicol is now becoming more expensive. The hawkers sell each container for 240 to 250 pesos. It's getting more difficult to find any.
Marcos has received death threats for refusing to cooperate with the huachicoleros.
They would call me and tell me to keep a low profile and let them go about their business. Otherwise, they would kill me.
He's tried reporting the threats to the federal authorities without any luck.
Fuel theft isn't considered a serious offense, so if the criminals get caught, they know that all they need to do is pay a fine and they'll be free. I'm very worried, and to be honest with you, I'm completely overwhelmed by organized crime.
State oil company Pemex rejected our requests for an interview. In a country where the oil industry is worth $38 billion a year, the stakes couldn't be higher. While much of Latin America's past has been plagued by drug trafficking, fuel theft could be the new front line in the battle against organized crime.
Daniel Landsberg Rodriguez joins me now from Chicago. He's a geopolitical risk consultant and teaches at Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, when did oil theft become a big deal, so to speak, in Mexico?
So essentially, Mexico is a country, like much of Latin America, that has a rather thriving informal economy. If you drive down a street in the north of Mexico or a highway, as was mentioned in your excellent report, you'll see people selling everything from sheet metal to gas canisters to popcorn to unregulated food products. It's a large part of the local way of life. Mexico, like Venezuela, has a lot of smuggling. It has a fair amount of corruption within its oil sector, which, while not as dependent, it is essentially one of the largest inputs to Mexico's ability to make its social programs, which are a big part of its governing. Mexico recently raised oil prices or gasoline prices a few months ago or earlier this year. Because of what was basically a fiscal imbalance. Right now, Mexico is in the process of trying to revamp and to some extent privatize its energy sector. It's trying to bring in investment from abroad, trying to take what's really an aging infrastructure, which, as your report pointed out, is partially perforated by holes, and turn it into something that can be more thriving.
You mentioned... Sorry to interrupt. You mentioned foreign investors, but isn't the scale of this oil theft having an impact on the government's ability to do that, to attract foreign investors?
Absolutely. There's a certain irony that what was seen as a fiscal measure in raising gasoline prices has basically created a situation where the margins for stealing gasoline are much higher than they were before. So whereas a few years ago, a lot of the huachicoleros would have been very sort of small mom and pop shop outfits, there's been almost immediate interest taken in this process by the cartels. And what we've seen, or what you showed in your report, was it seemed to me to be a relatively small operation. But there's larger ones. The vast majority of the gasoline that's being sold illicitly after having been stolen is not being sold to people on the street or to, for people who are looking to fill up a truck or even a fleet of trucks. They're being sold to gasoline stations directly. They're being sold to industry. So this is actually a business that has become very sophisticated very quickly. And authorities have struggled to be able to meet the challenges because when the cartels are involved, often they have armored cars, they have better weaponry than the local police, and really only the military can stand up to them.
I understand that the federal government did deploy hundreds of security personnel to an area known as the Red Triangle earlier this year. So What else, though, has the government been doing, though, to put a stop to this?
So it's difficult to do. A lot of the same mechanics which have made the cartels so difficult to face in the realm of drugs or in the realm of other smuggling can just as easily be applied to siphoning gasoline and selling it. Whereas Puebla is very much sort of the epicenter, the scale is such that it involves a lot of other states, including Oaxaca, even Veracruz, which is the heart of the national oil industry, or the region which is the heart of the nation's oil industry, has these thriving gasoline theft outfits. So it's a very large area that has to be policed, not just Puebla. And military is overstretched to a certain extent because they also have to be policing cartel activity. And the relationship with the United States under the current U.S. administration has been a complicating factor, because whereas before it was often easier to involve the DEA directly, some of those relations, because of the rhetoric from its northern neighbor, have raised some of the political costs of asking the U.S. for help.
Another complicating factor, I imagine, is the fact that some people actually view these oil thieves as Robin Hood-style heroes, and the villagers are actually given gifts. Is that right?
Absolutely. And keep in mind that, as is the case with a lot of illicit organizations in Latin America and around the world, it's not just them being enriched. Often they come from poor communities, and that money is something that goes to their extended families. It's something that can go towards their friends, other people who are working with them. So it's, in a sense, this level of corruption is almost a wealth redistribution mechanism, which touches, as you mentioned in the report, the public sector as well, with some of the bribes that are paid off to officials to either turn a blind eye or, in certain cases, defend some of the offenders.
I'm afraid we've run out of time. Thank you very much, though, for joining us for today's Focus. Daniel Landsberg-Rodriguez joining us there from Chicago.
Having me on the show.
Pleasure. And thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I'll be back at the top of the hour.